So I'd like to introduce Ron Valiant. He's going to talk about the UNDRIP that's being pushed on us. So thank you, Ron, for coming. Thank you guys again for coming out tonight.
And thank you, Colin, for all the hard work. And there's a lot of volunteers who put this all together. They're really good freedom fighters. So some of you might know me from my YouTube channel. How many here know about YouTube channel? Put your hands up. Oh, good, quite a few. Yeah, I started that YouTube channel because I ran in the 2019, well actually before that, when the PPC came about, and I saw that there was actually a glimmer of hope, because I thought that in 2017 the only hope for Canada was a benevolent military coup to wipe everything out.
I agree.
Okay, and then with that thing, I started that channel because of that, and then I just called it the PPC channel because I didn't want to put my name out there, because you put your name out there, you're in the crosshairs, right? So eventually I had to, because I ran in northeastern BC from Valemount, Prince George, all the way north and east. It cost me 40 grand to do that, and I went and lived out of the camper van for 3 months. But I did that because that was the most important election of our lifetimes. And yeah, you might know me from that, and you might know me from the politics or whatever, but I'm not a politician. I'm a tradesman. I'm a licensed journeyman carpenter and pipe fitter. And but the last 3 years, I haven't worked. I've just been doing this. I've gone on my own dime, and if there's any heavy hitters in here who want to see me keep going, maybe talk to me. Because really, we are at war. This is what's happening, is that we're at war, and it's through the politicians. So we'll get into our talk here, I guess. And so 1970, well, I remember watching the first Apollo mission to the moon or whatever on TV, and that just was absolutely mind-blowing. But I've always been a critical thinker, and I'm asking, how did they get that shot or this shot or whatever? And I was young, And so then after that, there was Apollo 13, and this is what this slide is about. And as they were going to the moon, as the story went, that they were trying to mix the oxygen, liquid oxygen, and then it blew up. And then it became a rescue mission, and they were just going to go around the moon and come back to Earth, and hopefully these guys can live. And you guys, know the story, right? But depending on where you were in that situation, it would affect you quite a bit differently. If you were on the Earth, and these guys, ended up dying that horrible death of just, floating off into space and whatever, you'd be sad. But if you're in the capsule, then you're kind of in a different position. And what I'm telling you here, folks, is that we are all now in that capsule. And so this is where we're headed. And so, actually, Dejana was going to buy a clicker, and then it didn't get in time, so she's my clicker, and I'll be her clicker, I guess. Unless someone else wants to volunteer and be the clicker for her while I do something else. So I'll just go click. The cat's out of the bag, right? We can't hide it. Okay, so where are we at here? So, yeah, so you click too much. The next. Can I say click twice? Okay, actually, I can just do it this way. Okay, so I'm telling people that Canada, we have a problem, just like, the Apollo 13 mission had. But the thing in Canada, you can have a flood over Manitoba and it doesn't affect us here. So bringing it closer to home, Alberta, click, we have a problem. And people think that, okay, we got Danielle Smith and she's going to fight for us, and we got the Sovereignty Act and all this stuff or whatever. But I have my YouTube channel under my name, Ron Valiant. I've got, I had the flyers from my last election or whatever. If you guys grab that, you can get my name, how to spell it or whatever. And inside, actually, it's a good thing to hand out to people, because in that election, in here, I talk about how we're going to lose our land rights in UNDRIP, with UNDRIP, okay? So it's a good thing to hand out to people, just to show them that part. But with Danielle Smith, in her Jordan Peterson interview, she said that we're going to have a pipeline corridor, a trade corridor over to Churchill. It's actually, I got a short video. There's a thing on YouTube now called Shorts. So you go on to Ron Valiant, you click on the name, and then it shows you a thing on the top. It has videos and it has shorts. If you click on the shorts, I got a really cool video with Boyd Anderson. Who knows Boyd Anderson here? I'm becoming a good buddy with Boyd. He's a fun guy. So, and so she says that we're going to have this corridor to Churchill. So we're going to be able to get our oil and gas or whatever, oil and gas to Tidewater. And the reason that is because the Liberals put Bill C-48 into play, where you can't have tankers off of the western coast. Yet they have tankers off the eastern coast bringing that Saudi oil in there and greasing all of the palms, right? And so anyhow, she says that, and then she says, what we're going to do then, if Trudeau goes ahead and says we can't do that, we're just going to go ahead and use UNDRIP, you know, and that's United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and this is what we're going to be talking about here. And so Alberta, we're in trouble, and then click family. You're going to leave here and you're going to say, family, we've got a problem here, right? So, and it all starts off with click. Brian Mulroney, 1992. I remember I was watching it, and there was talking about the Paris Accord and blah, blah, blah. And then they said, you know, there's going to be a conference. It's going to be the Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro in 1992. And I thought, boy, that's going to be a big one. I just, you know, could feel it. But I didn't know the magnitude of it till years later, and UN Agenda 21 came out. So what that means, it's United Nations agenda for the 21st century, for the next 100 years. And the thing you have to remember with the UN is that half of the UN members do not appreciate the way we live here in Western society and our freedoms and the way things go. There are dictatorships. There's China. China has a really big, powerful role in the UN. And so it was Brian Mulroney and the Conservatives who signed on to that puppy. Okay, and then Stephen Harper, when he got into power, everyone loved Stephen Harper. He signed on to it too, okay? And the thing is with the Conservatives is they make you feel good about what's going on. Meanwhile, all this stuff is going on behind the scenes. And click UN Agenda 2030. That came into play in 2015, September 27th. That's when Stephen Harper and Pierre went and, you know, the whole Conservative Party signed on to it. Maxime Bernier was there too, actually. And there's a video I have, you know, questioning him about it and everything else on my YouTube channel. But anyhow, so this is into play, and does anyone know of any MP who has told you about Agenda 2030 and what it really means? No. Okay. Oh, there's one in the back. Pat King. Hey, Pat. There's Pat King back there. And, okay, so they went ahead and signed on to that. And then what happened is, or what's happening now is Trudeau is simply implementing it. These guys are a tag team. When I was in northern BC, I was up against Bob Zimmer. He was very well liked up there, and still is. Although I probably put some dents there, I'm not too sure. But, I mean, we had 8 debates, and I brought up Agenda 2030. I brought up UNDRIP back then, because UNDRIP was a different bill back then. And he never wanted to talk about it. He just talked about other stuff, you know. And then he did finally talk about UNDRIP one time, second last meeting, and said, yeah, UNDRIP has been going on for a long time, and blah, 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 blah. Right? And the thing is that the Conservatives, if you go and look at some of the previous footage in the House of Commons, there's one woman, I forget which MP it was, she was complaining, you know, with all this theater and anger and everything else, and saying, why hasn't the Liberal government put into place UNDRIP so we can have reconciliation with our Native friends and stuff like that, right? Okay, so click. And that's an UNDRIP there, that's the document. Oh, you know, I didn't even bring it. I actually... Anyhow, I was given that book and when I was up in northern BC, and I read it, and when you read it, all this UN stuff, like when you look at Agenda 2030, you know, it wants to stop poverty and hunger around the world, that everyone has good health care and everything else like that. You have to understand it's the ultimate political doublespeak. Politicians tell you what you want to hear, and then they do whatever else, right? And this is how this is written. So you'd read it, and it says that the Indigenous have their right to their culture, you know, their societal things and everything else like that. You say, yeah, of course, you know, sure they do. I mean, why not, you know? But when you come to, okay, click, let's see if we're, Okay, that's Bill C-15. Okay, so I'll just maybe back up. So what, no, I'll back up. So what happened actually to fill in this, okay, there was Bill 262, that was Romeo Saginaw. She was a two-time NDP leader. And then so he put a private member's bill in 2017-18. It had passed the House of Commons, and there was brave senators who were blocking it actually. And then that bill got killed because of the election that happened in 2019. And 3 days after the federal election, John Horgan and his crew over there, they went and adopted UNDRIP as a province. And that's been going on all this time. And there's a Campbell River Mirror article that's 2 years old now. It was an Indigenous lawyer who said that basically BC is in for a big shock because there's new owners for the Crown land in BC. Now, one thing I need to make up front, I guess, is that what this is, the UN is using this as a weapon of mass destruction to destroy our society, and they're using it through the Indigenous folks, and they're going to be used and played and conned, because you'll see as we go through the document here. But it's very, 5 minutes? Oh, 10, 15. Okay. All right, so that's Bill 262 got killed, BC implements it, and at the end of 2020, at the throne speech, and I was doing it from my YouTube channel, and I, hold my nose and I listen to the throne speech and try and pick up things. They had a one-liner in there, and it says, "We will reintroduce UNDRIP." That's it. No one caught it, no media that I know of. Rebel didn't talk about it, nothing. So I had an emergency video I made, and it got good traction for me, 50,000 views. That's good for me. But anyhow, people in Eastern Canada reached out to me, and then we tried fighting it. And so Bill C-15 went on, and they fast-tracked it, actually. And anyhow, we had talked to two Conservative MPs who were part. There's a first reading, second reading, standing committee, and then the final vote. In the standing committee, a lot of people are brought in, and they can say all their stuff or whatever. I wrote a letter. There was the, I can't think of the name, but an organization here, and you guys know who it is, I just can't think of it. They wrote into, anyhow, so we had a Zoom meeting, and I asked Mark Friesen to come along. You guys know Mark Friesen, probably. So we were in there, and Wes Peterson. Who knows Wes Peterson? Okay, anyhow, we were in this meeting with Arnold Vierson, and he's the MP here in Alberta. And I asked the question, I said, this is probably one of the most important bills in Canadian history. Why is it I don't see anything on your social media or YouTube? How come you're not warning anyone? And you know what his answer was? Some things are better left unsaid. We were so stunned that we didn't even ask the logical question, which would be, why? Right? So anyhow, that was that. And Arnold was being honest, I think. So then, Jamie Schmale, he was the vice chair of that meeting, and we were having a Zoom meeting with him, and and he says, it's a terrible thing that no one knows about UNDRIP. And I says, well, that's on you. You're the official opposition. You're very well paid. I don't see anything on your social media or YouTube channel. He says, yeah, but we need help, he said. And I think Mark Friesen almost blew a gasket on that one, because we've been fighting, sacrificing for the last years to warn people, right? So that's the thing. And then so he said that, but yet if you go and look, he'll have not posted one thing about UNDRIP. Pierre will not have posted one thing about UNDRIP. No one will. And Pierre, when he did his acceptance speech, he says, and we'll make sure that the Indigenous will have the ability to do projects on their land. But what he doesn't tell you is what we're going to see here right away. Okay, click. Okay, Bill C-15. Okay, so this is looking at, I'm just going to read off my little guy here. So it was Arnold Vierson who pointed us to the meaning of Bill C-15. It's not a very long thing. If you go look up Bill C-15 first reading, you'll see the bill, and then you'll also see the 46 articles of UNDRIP. And Bill C-15, under consistency, the Government of Canada must, in consultation and cooperation with Indigenous peoples, so there is a thing there, take all measures necessary to ensure that the laws of Canada are consistent with the Declaration. and the declaration is defined in the bill as being UNDRIP. Click. Okay, so when I received that book, UNDRIP book in 2019, I read through all the stuff. Yeah, of course, yeah, that sounds good and everything else. But then, let's see here, it's not... I'm pressing on it, but it's not giving me the next page here.
Just say click.
Oh, you know, that's... Okay, Article 26. The Indigenous peoples have the rights to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. Now, the thing you have to remember is that I was looking in the document, and I said, what's the definition of Indigenous, you know? This is 20 years in the making of the Indigenous experts, you know, and they don't define what Indigenous is in the document. So I started looking around on the UN web page, and I couldn't see any kind of legal definition. And basically, they just quote someone else's definition of it, right? And so I have a pretty exclusive video. I don't think anyone else has really posted this, and it's Romeo Saginash, and this is during the standing committee. It's like 8 or 10 hours long, a video, and I grabbed that little section, and Romeo Saginash says that there is no definition, because if there is a definition of Indigenous, it's going to leave people out. So think about that. So with these native bands or whatever going ahead with this, and it's really the top people who are doing this. It's a top-down thing. I think a lot of the people, native people, you know, if they catch wind of what's going on, they wouldn't want anything to do with it. But so this is going to be really broad in the future, because Indigenous in the law dictionary means born of the land or native to the land. So we're all Indigenous, right? Yeah. And so ultimately the game plan is, from what I can see, is that who's going to want to own land when everyone else is just kind of walking all over everyone else, you know what I'm saying? And so, and it's land, territories, and resources, you know, so it's a big deal. And so if you look at UNDRIP, look at it under this lens, because when it talks about all these other things, it's always couched in this thing of Article 26. Click. Article 28 says that the Indigenous peoples have the right to redress by means that can include restitution. So restitution means to make right. So that means to give the land back. So they have the right to get the land back, or when this is not possible, just, fair, and equitable compensation. That word equitable, you're going to hear pop up all over the place. You hear the politicians saying equitable all the time. That's one of the buzzwords that you want to learn. Equitable compensation for the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or used. So, get the land back, or there's going to be restitution. Click. Article 5 says that the Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinct political, legal, economic, social, and cultural institutions while retaining their right to participate fully, if they so choose, in the political, economic, cultural life of the state. And so, you know, when I first read that, I thought, yeah, of course, because in Canada you got the reserves, right? And the reserves basically are their own countries. You see, you know, like when they would leave the reserve, it's like going into the United States or another foreign country. So yeah, of course they have those rights, but nowhere in UNDRIP does it talk about reserves. It's not talking about reserves. And you can actually, David Menzies did a video with a rebel, and it was like there was a circle of tents or whatever in Dundas Square, I think it is in Toronto. And there was a woman there. She didn't look like she was Native American. She looked like she was from, but she says, this is my Indigenous people, and this is my Indigenous land. You know, what right do you have to come onto my Indigenous land? And it's right in the middle of, you know, Toronto. And then David Menzies says, I don't know, it kind of looks like a bunch of tents from the petrochemical industry. I like David. And actually, David was going to interview me, because we were trying to get major media coverage, and but it never happened with Rebel until just recently, but it's kind of too late now, because, but anyhow, it's too late as far as changing it on that level. Article 30 says that military activities shall not take place in the lands or territories of Indigenous peoples unless justified by a relevant public interest. Click. Oh, sorry. Okay, 30. Oh, 30. Okay, you're... Yeah, she's hired now again. Okay, public interest or otherwise freely agreed with or requested by Indigenous peoples concerned. So the UN, basically, they want to be able to have a world government. And they want to eviscerate national state lines and everything. And all these things is multiple attack on our system here. And, you know, by having it so that these Indigenous people say, well, Cold Lake, you know, with that actually my father-in-law, he flew fighter jet for the Canadian military, and they lived up there, and he did a lot of wargaming and whatnot, and that's how they practiced. But that won't be happening anymore, right? So it's going to eviscerate our military. Click. Okay, Article 36. Indigenous peoples in particular, those divided by international borders, have the right to maintain and develop contracts, relations, cooperation, and activities for spiritual, cultural, political, economic, and social purposes, and this is the part, with their own members as well as others across borders. So this is to eviscerate the borders, right? So you can have foreign Indigenous come into Canada and partake of UNDRIP, right? And then if they walk across some land, they can say, I use the land, that's mine now, right? Doesn't that make sense? And the thing with UNDRIP is it's so open-ended that it's just like an absolute bomb, right? And so think about the Chinese as an example. They would be Indigenous to China. So through this, they could actually go ahead and do that too. You know, it's not to hit on the Chinese. I'm just saying that it can be all kinds of people doing this, right? Okay, so click. We're running out of time here. So Article 46. Okay, so I might want too many. So this is a thing that the various different Indian bands need to really figure out and understand. It's the very last article of UNDRIP. You know how it always is, at the very end, or the small print or whatever? It says, nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, people, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act contrary to the Charter of the United Nations.
What's that got to do?
Yeah. Has Pierre told you that? Or your local MP? No, they haven't. And they know about it. I mean, we sent, I wrote a letter, whatever, it got sent to every MP. But mind you, they get a lot of material. So that's really a big deal right there. So let's see here. I'm down to no time here, so I'm not going to do the rest of the thing. Actually, go to the next one, because the thing is, it's been hard to prove to people over these years that this is really a thing. Because oh, that's just wrong, he's kind of, and or that he's exaggerating. But look at this. At the very bottom there, it says, and this is a Campbell River Mirror article I was talking about. It said that British Columbians are in for a big shock. Let's see, I got to make this bigger. When ownership of large parts of the province switches to the Crown land to First Nations. I'll give you an example of this. Where I ran up there in northern BC, there's a town called Chetwynd, as you know. Okay, and they're laying off 400 people, and they're shutting down the sawmill up there. And the reason why they're doing that is because they can't get timber. The reason why they can't get timber is because the BC government is not licensing them to get timber. And the reason why the BC government is not licensing them to give timber is because the Crown land is owned by the different Indian bands up there. And that's what the deal is. And so in northern Alberta, I heard that Trudeau and those guys went up there and they talked to the Indian chiefs up there and they said, okay, look, you guys claim all this land, but you shut everything down. And then there was one chief, now this is third-hand information, maybe fourth, okay, so, but it fits in with what the deal is. And they were given $880 million, and the one chief didn't like it, so he got the boot, stuck another one in there. But take that as not fact at all, okay? But this is what is going to play out. They're going to claim the land, they're going to shut everything down. That's what you need to know about, right? And so here we are in our situation. There was recently, Ron here, he does a blog of A Dog and His Bone from Cochrane. Okay, well anyhow, he was watching it. What they do is they put in these big blocks, And it's a top-down governmental system. So in Calgary, it's the Calgary Municipal Board, I think, something like that. And then so it's Rocky View County, Foothills County, all the towns there with Calgary. Okay, and they had a meeting in December of last year, and they did their land. You know, we acknowledge that we're on treaty land or whatever. And then there was a Métis chief from Red Deer who spoke there, and he basically was saying that we're claiming all the land from Lacombe to the southern border. And these guys who sat on that board didn't even bat an eye, didn't ask any questions, didn't counter or anything. And so, what we need to do is, and I don't have any time to talk about it now.
Keep going.
Yeah, okay.
Tell us what to do.
Yeah, so what I was trying to do with my YouTube channel and my social media was to get it out broadly and get it into the United States, get Tucker Carlson or some, you know, Glenn Beck or USA Watchdog to talk about it, so it can come back into Canada, people can learn about it and raise a stink, and then stop Bill C-15. That didn't happen. So recently I just thought, okay, we can't stop it federally. Bill C-15 is already there. Our province is full steam ahead. Go look up Alberta UNDRIP. They got a whole plan or whatever that they're implementing or what. So I thought, okay, let's go to the county level and to the towns. So what I did is I contacted every councillor and mayor actually even Calgary and the Foothills and Rocky View County. I even sent it to the admins as well, because the administrators are the ones who deal with this, and you know, just warning them what's going on. And I've had 3 councillors talk to me, and they're really appreciative because they're in this fight. And I kind of had the idea that everyone's kind of corrupt, but they're not actually. They're like us, and they're trying to figure out what's going on too. So it's good to be able to educate your town councillor and your mayor, as well as to your county as well, and going to the MLA, get them, because if we can get the MLAs to fight back on this, we would have a chance in Alberta. But if we can get our counties to push back on that, that's a real safeguard for us, right? So that's one of the solutions that we would have here. The other thing is to memorize Article 26. So what's going to happen, like Vancouver actually, I did a video, if you go on and look at Bombshell, I think it's 4 months ago, Vancouver has new owners. Go watch that, because I go through, Vancouver now has an UNDRIP strategy plan. Saskatoon has, they've accepted UNDRIP as well, and it's going to go everywhere. And in there, I go through and I highlight and I talk about the key points of what they want to do. And they say basically, the city council unanimously said that all the land under Vancouver is owned by 3 Indian bands. I can't think of it right now. The Sawatooth and the Musqueam and the other one. Okay, so anyhow, so they've said that, and they said that they are the right and title holders of that land. And so because of that, all kinds of things are going to happen. I talked all about it. That's actually where the video or this presentation was going to go, but it's going to take too long. You can go ahead and watch that video and learn about it. And it means, you know, like having, you know, a land tax because you're on their land. So if you guys end up getting a fee or a land tax for Indigenous, you know, use of the land or whatever it is, and if you pay it, I think it means that you're acknowledging it's their land, right? Wouldn't it make sense? So if you go and do that, I think you're hooked. You're not going to be able to have recourse. And this is where our fight is going to have to be, where we raise a really big stink. And so that's coming soon. It's coming up. And that's one of the things. And there's other solutions as well, but it pays to learn a little bit about the UNDRIP.